While the world's eyes have been locked on Ukraine, something huge has been unfolding just south of Russia's border. Azerbaijan has openly rebelled against Moscow. It all started last year when Russian forces shot down an Azerbaijani civilian plane, killing dozens. Then recently, things got even worse. In a shocking incident, 2 Azerbaijani citizens died in Russian custody, reportedly after being tortured. That was the breaking point.
All is not well in the Caucasus. Most people may not think of Russia and Azerbaijan when they hear about global tensions, but diplomatic tensions are soaring between Russia and Azerbaijan.
In recent days, Russian authorities carried out a sweeping police operation. Over 50 people were arrested, all of them either ethnic Azerbaijanis or Russian citizens of Azerbaijan.
In response, Azerbaijan launched a sweeping crackdown. It arrested top Russian state media figures and shut down Russian cultural centers across the country. But that's not all. While tensions with Moscow have been boiling over, Baku has been quietly building new military alliances with Israel, Turkey, and the United States. And with their support, Azerbaijan has been growing strong and taking bold steps that directly challenge both Russia and Iran. What's happening in the South Caucasus right now could reshape the balance of power across Eurasia. And in today's video, we're breaking it all down. So let's dive in. Now, stories like this rarely make it to the mainstream. Russia losing influence in its own backyard? That's not what the algorithm wants you to see. So if you're still watching, take a second to like and subscribe. It helps the video reach more people who want the real story. We appreciate you. To really understand why the split between Russia and Azerbaijan matters so much, we have to look at how it all started. Since the 1800s, Azerbaijan has been controlled by Russia, as it was part of the Russian Empire. Later in the 20th century, when the Soviet Union was formed, Azerbaijan became one of its republics. That doesn't mean it was just influenced by Moscow, it was run by it. The Soviet system controlled the economy, education, and politics. One of the most important figures during this time was Heydar Aliyev. He worked in the KGB, the Soviet Union secret police, and eventually became the leader of Soviet Azerbaijan. He was trusted by Moscow and rose to high ranks in the Soviet government. His leadership showed how closely tied Azerbaijan was to the Soviet system. Even though the Soviet Union brought developments like roads, factories, and schools, it also kept Azerbaijan under tight control. In 1991, when the Soviet Union finally broke apart, Azerbaijan became independent. But independence didn't mean stability. Right away, Azerbaijan was pulled into a violent conflict with Armenia over a region called Nagorno-Karabakh. This area was inside Azerbaijan's borders, but mostly populated by ethnic Armenians. The war was brutal and left thousands dead. Russia, still the most powerful country in the region, stepped in. It sold weapons to both sides and tried to act like a peacekeeper. For Azerbaijan, this was a tough situation. It needed Russia's help to manage the conflict, but it also wanted to build ties with the West. Countries like the United States and members of the European Union were interested in Azerbaijan's oil and gas. Naturally, Baku saw this as a chance to grow its economy by working with them. Heydar Aliyev, who became president of independent Azerbaijan in 1993, understood how to play both sides. He kept a working relationship with Russia, but also opened the door to Western companies and governments. This balancing act helped Azerbaijan survive and grow. One example of this cooperation with Russia was the Gabala radar station. In 2002, Azerbaijan allowed Russia to keep using this military base. This helped Moscow monitor activity across the region. It was a sign that the two countries still had strong ties. And in 2022, they signed a new agreement called the Declaration on Allied Interaction. It said they would work together on trade, security, and other issues. On paper, it looked like this partnership was solid. But underneath, things were changing. You see, Azerbaijan was growing more confident. It had built closer ties with Turkey, a regional power and a NATO member. It also had started working more closely with Israel, especially on military technology. In fact, Israeli drones played a major role in Azerbaijan's victory during the 2020 war with Armenia. This was a key moment because it showed that Baku didn't need to rely on Russian weapons anymore. At the same time, Russia's influence was starting to slip. Its invasion of Ukraine in 2022 pulled its attention and resources away from the South Caucasus. That gave Baku more room to act on its own. All the while, Azerbaijan's economy has been booming in recent years, and the numbers prove it. In 2024, GDP grew by 4.6%, with the non-oil sector jumping over 7%. That momentum is still going, as 2025 projections show growth of 3.5%, with a total GDP expected to hit nearly $75 billion. Energy exports, trade routes, and foreign investments are all pushing Azerbaijan into a new era of economic strength. You know what that means? less and less reliance on Moscow. Now, let's look at some of the moments that finally pushed Azerbaijan to break away from Russia. So what actually broke the relationship between Russia and Azerbaijan? Well, it wasn't just one thing, it was a series of events that kept building up until something snapped. The biggest turning point came in December of 2024. A Russian missile brought down an Azerbaijani passenger plane. And just so we're all clear, it wasn't a military aircraft. It was full of civilians, families, workers, students, and dozens of people were killed. The reaction in Azerbaijan was immediate and furious. What made it worse was how Russia responded. Instead of a real apology, Moscow brushed it off as a mistake and moved on. For Azerbaijan, that wasn't just careless, it was insulting. People flooded the streets in protest. They were angry, not just at the attack, but at how little their lives seemed to matter to Russia. Even the government didn't stay quiet. It grounded Russian aircraft, canceled trade deals worth millions, and publicly condemned Moscow. It wasn't just about one tragic event, it was about years of frustration boiling over. Azerbaijan had been growing stronger, more independent, and less willing to be treated like a junior partner. This plane incident made it clear that Russia wasn't in control anymore, and Baku was ready to show it. Then came another blow, just a few months later in late June of this year. In the Russian city of Yekaterinburg, police raided neighborhoods where migrant workers lived. 2 Azerbaijani brothers were arrested and later died in custody. Russian officials gave vague explanations, but many in Azerbaijan believed it wasn't an accident. They saw it as targeted abuse. The public was outraged once again. Protests broke out in Baku, and this time the government took even stronger action. Russian media outlets were shut down. Even journalists linked to Moscow were arrested. It turned out that the Baku office for the Kremlin propaganda network Sputnik was reportedly a hub of the Russian FSB. Russian-language schools and cultural centers were closed. Even small events like Russian film nights or language classes were canceled. It was a clear message. Azerbaijan was cutting ties, not just politically, but culturally too. These events hit hard because they felt personal. It wasn't just about politics or strategy. They made people feel like Russia didn't respect them, didn't value them, and didn't see them as equals. That kind of feeling doesn't go away easily, and it wasn't just the public that felt it. The government acted like it had reached a breaking point, but the real shift had started even earlier, with the long-running conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh. This region has been a source of tension for decades. In 2020, Azerbaijan launched a major offensive and took back large parts of territory from Armenian forces. Russia stepped in afterward, sending peacekeepers to keep things calm. That gave Moscow a lot of influence again, but Azerbaijan wasn't done. In 2023, it launched another operation and regained full control of the region. This time, it didn't need Russia's help. In fact, it told Russian peacekeepers to leave in 2024. That was a huge moment. It showed that Azerbaijan was now fully in charge of its own territory and didn't need Moscow's permission to act. When President Ilham Aliyev visited Moscow later that year, he didn't even bring up Nagorno-Karabakh. Instead, he talked about trade and transportation routes. That silence said a lot. It was a quiet but clear way of saying that Russia no longer had a say in Azerbaijan's internal affairs. The balance of power had shifted. All of this happened while Russia was deeply involved in its war in Ukraine. Since 2022, that war has drained Russia's military, its economy, and its attention. Moscow has been focused on fighting, rebuilding, and dealing with sanctions. That left a gap in the South Caucasus. Azerbaijan saw that gap and moved quickly. It even started sending humanitarian aid to Ukraine. Imagine that. There were also reports that it had sent weapons as well. Russia noticed, but it didn't react strongly. That silence told Azerbaijan something important. Russia wasn't as strong as it used to be. The dynamic had truly shifted. Now, let's dive into how Azerbaijan is building a new future with powerful allies like the US, Israel, and Turkey, and it's not looking back. It's forming new alliances, strengthening its military, and expanding its economy without relying on Moscow. It's not just about breaking away from Russia. It's about stepping into a new role in the region, one where Baku calls the shots. When it comes to its partners, Baku has been building for years, slowly moving closer to the United States, Israel, and Turkey. And these weren't just random choices. These countries share goals that line up with what Azerbaijan wants. They all want to keep the South Caucasus stable, push back against Iran's influence, and make the most of Azerbaijani oil and gas. This new group is changing how things work in the region, and it's making both Russia and Iran nervous. One of the biggest reasons this shift is happening is energy. Azerbaijan has a lot of oil and natural gas, and Europe needs both. For a long time, Europe got most of its gas from Russia. But when Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, that changed fast. Europe started looking for other sources, and Azerbaijan stepped up. It already had the Southern Gas Corridor, a major pipeline that sends gas through Georgia and Turkey to Europe. Countries like Italy and Greece rely on it. By 2027, this pipeline is expected to deliver 20 billion cubic meters of gas every year. That's a really big deal for Europe, especially as it tries to cut ties with Russian energy. After the plane was shot down in 2024, Europe got even more serious about working with Azerbaijan. Perhaps they saw the fallout coming ahead of time. Countries like Germany signed new energy deals, and others followed. For Azerbaijan, this wasn't just about selling gas. It was about building stronger ties with powerful countries and gaining more influence. These deals gave Azerbaijan more than just money. They gave it leverage. Europe needs that gas to keep homes warm and factories running. And that puts Azerbaijan in a stronger position than ever before. The money from energy exports is also helping Azerbaijan in other ways. It's being used to upgrade roads, expand trade routes, and build up the military. And because Europe now sees Azerbaijan as a key energy partner, they're also talking more about security and regional cooperation. The 2024 shootdown pushed these talks forward. Europe saw that Russia wasn't reliable anymore, so it turned to Baku. That shift gave Azerbaijan a bigger voice in European politics and made it harder for Russia to push back. But energy isn't the only reason this new alliance matters. Military support is another big part of the story. Israel has been one of Azerbaijan's most important partners in this area. During the wars in Nagorno-Karabakh in 2020 and 2023, Azerbaijan used Israeli drones and weapons to win back territory. These tools gave Azerbaijan a major edge on the battlefield. After the 2024 plane incident, the two countries started working even more closely. They began talking about air defense systems and sharing intelligence. Israel sees Azerbaijan as a valuable partner, especially because it borders Iran. That location makes it easier for Israel to keep an eye on what Iran is doing. This military partnership has grown stronger over time, and perhaps that's where the drama begins for Iran. In June of 2025, Israel launched a surprise attack on Iran, hitting several military and nuclear sites across the country. The strikes were fast and targeted, and they caught a lot of people off guard. But what really made the situation explode was where those attacks may have come from. Iran believes that Israel used Azerbaijani territory or airspace to carry out the operation. That claim immediately raised tensions between Iran and Azerbaijan. During the attack, people in northern Iran, especially in areas near the border with Azerbaijan, reported seeing drones and hearing aircraft overhead. Some even said they saw drones flying in from the direction of Azerbaijan. At the same time, residents in Nakhchivan, which is a part of Azerbaijan separated from the rest of the country, also reported unusual air activity. Iran quickly pointed the finger at Baku, saying it had allowed Israel to use its land or skies to launch the strikes. As you might imagine, Iranian leaders didn't stay quiet. They demanded answers from Azerbaijan and accused it of helping Israel. The Iranian president called the Azerbaijani president directly and asked for an explanation. Iran's foreign ministry also made public statements warning that it would not tolerate any cooperation between Baku and Tel Aviv that threatened Iranian security. But Azerbaijan denied everything. It said the claims were false and that it had nothing to do with the attacks. Still, the timing and the reports on the ground made Iran very suspicious. What made it even more sensitive was that some of the Israeli airstrikes hit targets in Iran's East Azerbaijan province. That's an area where many ethnic Azerbaijanis live. So the attack didn't just feel like a military strike, it felt personal. Iran also believes that Israeli intelligence has been operating inside Azerbaijan for a while. They believe that Israel has been using it as a base to gather information on Iran. That's another reason why Tehran is so alarmed. But here's something that adds fuel to that fire. Even though Azerbaijan denied helping Israel, it didn't criticize the attack either. That silence said a lot to Iran. It made Tehran think that Baku was quietly supporting Israel's actions, even if it wasn't openly admitting it. And that's where things get dangerous. Iran now sees Azerbaijan not just as a neighbor, but as a possible threat. It's worried that Israeli operations could continue from Azerbaijani territory, and that could lead to more conflict. So now the relationship between Iran and Azerbaijan is more tense than ever. Israel sees Azerbaijan as a key partner in the region. Iran sees it as a growing problem. And Azerbaijan is stuck in the middle, trying to keep its new allies close while avoiding a direct clash with Tehran. It's a risky position to be in, and one wrong move could make things spiral even further. But here's something interesting to meditate on. During the fallout from the Israel-Iran strikes, Azerbaijan found itself at the center of a wave of false claims. Right after the attacks, hundreds of fake social media accounts started spreading the same message, that Israeli drones had launched from Azerbaijani territory. The posts were fast, coordinated, and clearly meant to stir up trouble. Some even used fake maps and edited videos to make it look real. But none of it added up. The distances didn't make sense, and there was no actual evidence. Still, the damage was done. The goal wasn't to prove anything, it was to turn Iran against Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan didn't stay quiet. Its parliament, through a special commission focused on foreign interference, said the country had been targeted by a large-scale disinformation campaign. The aim was to create tension between Baku and Tehran at a time when the region was already on edge. According to Azerbaijani officials, the campaign involved over 1,000 fake accounts, many of them linked to networks operating inside Iran and Armenia. But behind it all, there's a strong belief that Russia was the one pulling the strings. The strategy fits. Stir up conflict between neighbors, keep the region unstable, and distract from your own problems. It's a move Russia has used before, and with Moscow losing influence in the South Caucasus, it has every reason to try and slow down Azerbaijan's rise. By making Iran suspicious of Baku, Russia could weaken both and keep itself relevant. But this time, Azerbaijan didn't take the bait. Instead of falling into the trap, Baku pushed back. It denied the claims, called for calm, and made it clear that it had nothing to do with the Israeli strikes. Behind the scenes, Azerbaijani officials reportedly shared evidence with Iran showing how the campaign was designed to create division. Whether or not Tehran fully accepted it, the message was clear. Azerbaijan isn't interested in being dragged into someone else's fight. This wasn't just about fake posts, it was about control. And for Russia, it was a last-ditch effort to keep its grip on a region that's slipping away. But Azerbaijan saw it coming and exposed it before it could do more damage. Unable to control Azerbaijan, now Russia seems to be running campaigns so that it's destroyed by its neighbors. Pretty crazy, right? Moving on to another key partner, enter the United States. For years, the US has worked with Azerbaijan on counterterrorism and military training. American advisors have helped train Azerbaijani forces to deal with threats and to protect their borders. But after 2024, the relationship deepened. The US started looking at Azerbaijan as a key partner in a region where Russia and Iran are losing ground. Azerbaijan's location makes it valuable. It sits right next to Iran and close to the Middle East, which gives the US a better view of what's happening in the area. Washington has also been more open to working with Azerbaijan on regional security. This includes sharing intelligence and supporting border protection. It also includes helping Azerbaijan stand up to pressure from larger powers. It's not just about military help. It's about building a long-term partnership that gives both sides something they need. For the US, it's about keeping an eye on Iran and limiting Russia's reach. For Azerbaijan, it's about having strong allies who can offer support when things get tense. Everybody is winning from this. Then there's Turkey. The bond between Turkey and Azerbaijan is deep. They speak similar languages, share cultural ties, and have supported each other for years. In 2021, they signed the Shusha Declaration. One of the most important parts of this declaration was the military commitment. It stated that if either country faced aggression or a threat to its sovereignty, the other would step in with support. That's a big deal, especially in a region where tensions can rise quickly. It's also called for joint military training, modernization of armed forces, and closer coordination between security councils. In short, it brought the two militaries much closer together and made it clear that they would act as one if needed. The timing and location of the signing were also significant. It happened in Shusha, a city that Azerbaijan had just retaken during the 2022 Nagorno-Karabakh war. Holding the ceremony there sent a strong message, not just to Armenia, but to the entire region. Everyone understood that Turkey stood behind Azerbaijan's territorial claims and military victories. This declaration also touched on economic and energy cooperation. Both countries agreed to keep working together and strengthen their role in Europe's energy security. They also committed to boosting trade, building infrastructure, and improving transportation links. This includes support for the Zangezur corridor. This would connect mainland Azerbaijan to its Nakhchivan exclave through southern Armenia. For Azerbaijan, the Shusha Declaration gave it a powerful ally in Turkey, one that could help it stand up to pressure from Russia and Iran. For Turkey, it was a chance to expand its influence in the South Caucasus and strengthen its ties with a fellow Turkic nation. And for both countries, it was a clear signal that they were ready to shape the region's future together. After the 2024 shootdown, they stepped up joint training and defense planning. Turkey is a NATO member, so its support connects Azerbaijan to a much larger network. That adds another layer of protection and influence. Turkey also wants to be a major player in energy and trade. Azerbaijan fits perfectly into that plan. Together, they're building new routes for gas, oil, and goods that bypass Russia and Iran. This partnership is about more than just friendship. It's about building strength in a region where power is shifting fast, and it's working. Azerbaijan is no longer seen as a small country stuck between bigger powers. It's becoming a key player with strong allies and a clear direction. This new group, Azerbaijan, the US, Israel, and Turkey, isn't just about energy or defense. It's about pushing back against Russia and Iran. Azerbaijan is a Muslim country, but it runs things very differently from Iran. It's more open, more modern, and more focused on growth than on strict religious rule. That makes it good for countries like the US and Israel, which have tense relationships with Iran. Azerbaijan's border with Iran also makes it a useful partner for watching what's going on across the border. Now, let's see how these new partnerships are shaking up the entire region, from Russia's anger to Iran's growing worries. Moscow isn't happy about any of this. It's losing one of its closest partners in the region, and it doesn't have the strength to stop it. Things between Russia and Azerbaijan have gotten even more tense, and now Russian state media figures are making threats. With all the drama that's been happening, the Kremlin's loudest voices have started lashing out, and they are not holding back.
I'm talking about our neighbors. It's pretty sad. It really is. Where will this lead? Nowhere good. Well, at the very least, to serious economic losses, especially if Russia ranks third in terms of trade turnover, as in the case of Azerbaijan. And, as you understand, it's not oil and gas that we supply to Azerbaijan, but rather, let's say, higher value-added product.
Vladimir Solovyov, one of Russia's most well-known propagandists, warned that Russia and Azerbaijan share a 300-kilometer border. He said if things keep going the way they are, that border could become a problem. He also brought up trade, reminding Azerbaijan that Russia is its third largest trading partner. His message was clear. If Baku keeps pushing back, Moscow could hit back economically, or worse. Another Russian figure, Sergei Mardan, took it even further. He said Russia should rethink how safe it is for Azerbaijan to keep operating in the Caspian Sea. That was a not-so-subtle threat aimed at Azerbaijan's oil and gas exports. Others on Russian state TV even went further off the rails. Some started talking about missile strikes and military action. The tone wasn't just angry, it was dangerous. This kind of language isn't new for Russian media, but it shows just how far the relationship has fallen. Azerbaijan is no longer seen as a partner in Moscow. It's being treated like a problem, and the more Baku moves towards the US, Israel, and Turkey, the more aggressive the threats from Russia are becoming. Let's get into how this new group around Azerbaijan is changing the game in the South Caucasus. One of the biggest turning points was what happened after the 2023 war in Nagorno-Karabakh. Azerbaijan launched a fast and decisive military operation and took back full control of the region. That alone was a major shift, but what followed made it even more important. Over 100,000 ethnic Armenians who had lived in Nagorno-Karabakh for generations packed up and left. They crossed into Armenia, leaving behind homes, schools, and entire communities. It was a painful moment that created a humanitarian crisis and left Armenia shaken. For years, Armenia had counted on Russia to protect the Armenian population in Nagorno-Karabakh. Russian peacekeepers were stationed there after the 2020 war, and many Armenians believed they would step in if things got out of hand. But when Azerbaijan moved in, Russia didn't stop them. The peacekeepers stayed on the sidelines. That silence said everything. Armenia realized it couldn't rely on Moscow anymore. The trust was gone. And once that trust broke, Armenia started looking for new partners as well. That's when the United States and Europe stepped in. In 2024, Armenia and Azerbaijan reached a deal over several disputed villages along their shared border. These villages had been a source of tension for years, with both sides claiming them. The agreement was a big step towards peace, and what makes it even more significant was that Russia wasn't involved. The talks were supported by the US and European countries, and the deal was signed without Moscow at the table. That was a clear sign that the balance of power was shifting. For Azerbaijan, it showed that it could lead negotiations on its own terms. For Armenia, it was a difficult but necessary move towards new alliances. But just as one conflict started to cool down, another one began to heat up. This time, it's about a road. Azerbaijan wants to build a transport route through southern Armenia to connect its mainland to Nakhchivan, a small part of the country that's cut off by Armenian territory. This project is known as the Zangezur corridor. On the surface, it looks like a trade route. Azerbaijan says it will help move goods faster, boost the economy, and strengthen ties with Turkey and Europe. But the road is about more than just trade. It's about control. In the past, Russia supported the idea of the corridor because it wanted to place its peacekeepers along the route and manage the flow of goods. That would have given Moscow another way to stay involved in the region. But things have changed. Azerbaijan now has strong backing from Turkey, Israel, and the United States. That support makes the corridor more likely to happen But it also makes it more dangerous. Iran is watching closely, and it's not happy. Iran shares a border with Armenia and sees the Zangezur corridor as a threat to its own influence. If the road is built, it could cut off Iran's access to Armenia and reduce its role in regional trade. Tehran is also worried that Azerbaijan, with help from its new allies, could use the corridor to surround Iran or limit its movement. In 2024, Iranian officials made it clear that they would not accept the project. They warned that they would take any steps necessary to stop it, including military action if needed. That raised tensions across the region. Armenia is also nervous. It doesn't want to give up land or control, and it fears being caught between Azerbaijan and Iran. So what looks like a simple road project is actually a major flashpoint. If it goes forward without careful planning, it could spark a much bigger conflict. While all of this is happening, Baku is building new relationships that are changing how countries work together in the region. It's not just about the US, Israel, and Turkey. Azerbaijan is also strengthening ties with Central Asian countries like Kazakhstan. These countries are looking for new trade routes that don't rely on Russia, and Azerbaijan is offering a path forward. This is a problem for Moscow. For years, Russia used groups like the Collective Security Treaty Organization to keep former Soviet countries in line, but those groups are losing influence. Azerbaijan isn't interested in being part of Russia's orbit anymore. It's looking outward. China is also getting involved, though it's doing so quietly. It's investing in Azerbaijan's infrastructure, roads, ports, and railways. These projects fit into China's larger trade strategy, but they also support US and European efforts to build supply chains that avoid Russia. One of the biggest examples is the Middle Corridor. This trade route connects Asia to Europe and runs straight through Azerbaijan. What makes it so important is that it avoids both Russia and Iran. That's why it's growing so fast. In 2023, it moved 6.5 million tons of cargo. By 2025, it could hit 15 million. Countries like Kazakhstan and Georgia are working with Azerbaijan to expand it. China sees it as a faster way to reach Europe, and Europe sees it as a safer way to get goods and energy without relying on Moscow. Right now, Azerbaijan sits at the center of that route, and that makes it more than just a transit country. It makes it a key player in the future of Eurasian trade and politics. So where does all of this leave the relationship between Azerbaijan and Russia? In a word, broken. What used to be a careful partnership built on trade, shared history, and a regional strategy has now turned into open hostility. From the downing of a civilian plane to the deaths of Azerbaijani citizens in Russian custody, the trust is gone. And Azerbaijan isn't just walking away, it's pushing back hard by arresting Russian media figures, banning cultural ties, and building stronger alliances with the US, Turkey, and Israel. Azerbaijan is making it clear that it's done playing by Moscow's rules. It's choosing a new path, one that puts its own interests first and leaves Russia behind. But this isn't just about two countries falling out. It's about a shift in power across the South Caucasus. Russia is losing its grip, and Azerbaijan is stepping into a new role. This role is one that comes with more influence, more risk, and more attention from the rest of the world. The tension isn't over. Russia is angry, Iran is watching, and Azerbaijan is moving fast. What happens next could reshape the region for years to come. But one thing is certain: the old alliance, it's gone, and a new chapter has already begun.